Hello, friends, and welcome to the Worship Guitar Show. So glad you could be here this evening. Well, it would be hard to be a guitar player and not know about the passing of Edward Van Halen today. Obviously, not a praise and worship guitar player, but for those of us who grew up in the mainstream rock arena, it was a devastating day. So I am in a reflective mode. If I were to be completely honest, I've been in tears many times today, and that's just kind of the way it works sometimes. So rather than just mourning and paying homage, I thought it would be a really great opportunity to reflect on kind of this thing of ours. Largely the discipleship part of it, the fact that so many of us are separated from our church families with social distancing as all this stuff is being worked out. I think it's a really good opportunity for us to take a moment and just press the reset button and just kind of think, what is our legacy, right? I mean, I don't know about you. I'm old enough, as one of my guitar buddies said recently. He's on the upper side of 50, which I am definitely, and it's very confronting when somebody who was one of your heroes growing up dies. There's a history of cancer in my family, so that particular way of going, my dad died of cancer, his brother died of cancer. It's just like, as I do the big reveal, it's very unnerving. But sometimes when we unnerve stuff, um, God gets in there and kind of does what only God can do. So in any case, hello Paul, hello Brett, good to see you. I should say great to see you. Chris, hello. Rick, hello. Peter, yes, heartbroken. So, tonight I want to talk about this whole piece of the discipleship puzzle. I had so you guys know, worship musician is Jeff. Hello over there in YouTube. Bruce, hello, my friend. Worship musician. We're getting ready to launch a Spanish edition, which for us is a really, really big deal. I think again, if you were to think about the word legacy, what do you leave behind? What is it that you can kind of go, that was evidence that I came into this place and I left it better than when I came in? And Bruce Adolph, my publisher at Worship Musician Magazine, and I really felt a heartfelt need to come alongside the Spanish speaking church, not just in Latin America, but also in the United States, and do something to serve them as well. We Worship Musician is in this next year, we'll be stepping into, I believe it's 20th year of continuous publishing. And so because of that, we really felt, what can we do more? And that's not for us, and I'm sure you can relate to this. It's not about what can we do more to make money. That's never our motivation. It's what can we do more to serve the church? What can we do more to equip musicians? What can we do to help people have a more fulfilling experience when they walk out the door on Sunday afternoon, having served? If you're anything like me, this is analogy, acronym philo, first in last out. That's kind of always been me, because that's just kind of how I was inculcated, and that ties into where I'm going here. So I'm not actually rambling, although it could be rambly, but I will curtail that. One of the people that I had the opportunity to interview for this issue was Aiden King of Hillsong Young and Free. And the neat thing about interviewing Aiden is that, the Young and Free team was this youth worship team that followed up Hillsong United, that was the youth worship team. And, they're sprouting families, and so what happens is there is a cycle, whether we like it or not, that we're part of, and we have to understand what that means. And it was really interesting, in interviewing Aiden. One of the things that he talked about was one of the members of the Hillsong team, when he was just but like 13 or 14, said, it was Dylan, guitar player, said, hey, come on and play. And what he said was that one moment of encouragement was really kind of what opened the door. And I thought that was, if you look at, first of all, the reason Young and Free is so important to what we're doing is that they've just released a Spanish only EP. So they're like all in. And what you may or may not know is that they did a version of Alive in Spanish in the very first We Are Young and Free. So from the beginning, they've kind of had some skin in the game, if you will, of like, hey, we're in. But putting out an all Spanish EP is like we're all the way in, and I love that. So getting a chance to talk with Aiden and really get a chance, if you will, to take the pulse of what they're doing and why, and hearing his discipleship story really is fitting on a day like today. I think for those of us that are the guitar fanatics. And I'm going to go through and read the various comments here in just a moment, and just make sure I'm present with everybody and not just yapping at you, but talking with you. And first of all, thank you so much for coming tonight. Really, really appreciate it. So here's the thing: the discipleship model is different from church to church. But if you look at Jesus, it was pretty clear he had the 12. If it weren't for Jesus and the 12, we wouldn't be here, right? So who are your 12? Or at the very least, who is your one? And even if they're not, I will say this, and I realize it's not always a pleasant thing. Sometimes we don't, it's kind of like, this is a mainstream thing to say, so please don't take it out of context, or do take it out of context or something, I don't know. We don't get a chance to choose our families of origin, right? So because of that, sometimes we don't have a choice of who we actually turn around and go, this is who we get to disciple. Sometimes it's not an easy road, and sometimes God's really outworking what we've got to work out in ourselves to do that. And, so I encourage you, when the going gets rough and you look around and you go, this is going to be hard work, I just want to encourage you, just kind of go, this isn't about them, is it, God? He's going to go, no, it's about you. And that's the best part, because God softens our heart so we can be prepared to embrace the things that he's really set aside for us. And going back to the Young and Free thing, look, I think lots of teams might aspire to have the type of impact that Young and Free has, but that's not necessarily a reasonable expectation for every team, because not everybody can be Eddie Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen. I started to say Eddie Vedder, Eddie Van Halen, and it came out as one, right? Not everybody can sing like Eddie Vedder. Nobody is Kim Walker-Smith other than Kim Walker-Smith. And God makes those decisions. But what we're responsible for is, when we show up on a Sunday, what do we bring and who do we serve? And, it's really easy to think about serving this direction and not think about who it is on the back line that we could be serving, who it is that's over in the youth ministry, like Dylan, who was kind of like, hey, Aiden, I'm bringing you along, right? And it takes work, and it takes sometimes being counterculture to our church surroundings, and that's just okay, I want to, because it's going to be in the interview. One of the things that I asked Aiden was like, hey, I can't imagine that as you're young and free, everybody say, hey, just go do your own thing. And actually he was like, hey, when we wanted to do synth bass, there was a lot of pushback. And ironically, that is a big part of that sound, and all the worship teams that they inspired, that became part of the sound. Now, ironically, I asked Dylan, are there any sacred cows that you think about? He said, actually, the software synth, the synth bass is actually one of them. So ironically, the very thing that you chase after becomes this thing around your neck that it now defines you. So it's a strange thing. Be careful what you wish for, because you might get it, and then also be prepared, to go, okay, at what point does it stop serving us in a forward direction and keeps us tethered to the past? I thought that was a really interesting thing, and I'm sharing that with you because I'm always amazed at when I get a chance to talk with people that are really, really immersed in the worship thing, like the folks at Hillsong are. And I don't have a hero worship thing with that. What it is that my wife was a member of the Hillsong worship team. I, have been deeply inspired by those folks. I've gotten to know them just in the act of doing life. And they're the real deal. And it's easy to see the impact and not see all the hard work, right? It's kind of like you show up at the market, the farmer's market, you see the vegetables, and you're kind of, if you will, and I'm not saying you, I'm saying figuratively, you're picking through for the best ones, right? You have no idea the worst one, all the work that went into bringing that to market. We don't see all the work that goes into preparing these things. So the point being is what I want to do tonight is I want to see where people are at with asking questions about discipleship, and just in general checking in, um, and we can talk about guitar too, because honestly, it's I had a text exchange with Joe Satriani. He was my guitar teacher. Some of you know that, some of you don't. And I basically said to Joe, "You are my Eddie Van Halen," and I have benefited um, so much from that relationship that it is. I just have been so fortunate since I was 15, right? And you don't really realize the impact that can have decades later. All right, so let's take a look here. I am gaining my composure back, more or less. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yep. 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 Legacy. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. I read everybody's there, or that's the Facebook side. That's the YouTube side over there. Um, and So, Forrest, hey, Doug, great topic. Thank you. All right. So, I would love it if you guys would just kind of take a moment and share what discipleship looks like, um, from your perspective. What does it mean? And also do not be bashful about hitting me with some hard questions. I think, one of the things that is going to happen in whether it's in church life or it's in worship life is we're going to find ourselves tasked with answering some really tough questions when we get back to doing church like we used to, because it's easy to kind of get used to not being at church on a Sunday and kind of going, wow, we can turn on the game, we can watch the service on a replay, kind of getting into this, right? um, but it's I want to kick the can here and just say, again, it's easy to think about serving in the forward direction. A lot of the time we don't think about serving in the backward direction, nor do we think about serving up to our leaders, and that is really the sign of spiritual maturity. That I certainly don't profess to be some professor of spirituality, but one of the things that I learned very early on is like, what? If I'm going to figure this serving thing out, I have to realize it means serving my leaders, in ways that isn't always convenient, but also, it's that fine line of being. I'm going to use the S word. No, not that S word. Submitted. And it's actually one of the questions that I asked again, Aiden, because every so often I like to poke the bear a little bit. So it's like because it's really hard to serve your leaders when you feel they're dead wrong about stuff. But the honor comes in honoring them, whether they're right or wrong, in leadership, and it's a really important thing, because when we start to lead people, we are going to lead people in error, but their support allows us to cross the bridge and look back and go, I made the wrong call, but my team didn't abandon me midstream, and I'm kind of up there leading, and I look over and they're not with me. They're kind of like, we're with you. I once had one of my favorite people, Nick. He said, I'd take a bullet for you, and he meant it not in the literal way, but in the figurative way, because one of the things that I learned very early on was not to get buy-in in the classic sense, but for your team members to know that you would go the extra mile for them. If it's meeting them for coffee, it's meeting them for coffee. If it's picking them up when they got a flat tire, it's picking them up when they have a flat tire. If it's, you'll hear me talk about this drummer that I worked with, Dennis, who I loved to death. I would go over to rehearsal on Saturdays, and we would spend 4 hours playing with the click because Dennis was not yet able to play with the click. But I can tell you the bond, and I haven't seen Dennis for a number of years. I haven't interacted with him socially for quite some time. But the bond that developed because of that investment, those are priceless opportunities. And I will tell you, the dividends that I receive not out of thank you, but out of the investing of somebody else and pouring out at a cost to myself, I can't tell you how valuable that was in the dividends of life. So making a difference, where can we find our dividends? So I would love it if you guys would, maybe prayerfully consider where are some of the places that you can do that. What are some of the social gestures that you can do? Can you, I don't know, do virtual coffee dates or something? I don't know. All right. Let's see here. I see chat coming through. Alan, thank you so much. Let's see. I can pull in YouTube. I should be able to see my comments, but I don't seem to be seeing them. Where are my comments? Come on. There we go. There we go. Alan, look at that. Thank you so much. Man, I needed this tonight. Thank you so much. Ditto. And you are most certainly welcome. Okay. Let's see here. My buddy Rick, how you doing, Rick? It's been a day. Let's see if I can expand this so it's a little bit more. There we go. The great thing is that there's so much that we don't see. Even that that's in front of us. That I don't know. I know the interesting thing is I heard Alex Van Halen is an ordained minister. I don't know what he's an ordained minister of, but that gives me a lot of hope. And I can tell you one of the things that I know is I see a number of the guys in LA that actually get sober and get their lives straight, get their lives right with God. And I can tell you I did some hard living before I got saved, so I'm sure I'll have some answering to do. But fortunately, God kind of just wipes the slate clean. It's an amazing thing, and I'm just so grateful for that grace. It's just a beautiful thing. So Melissa Doppler has this saying, I can't bring in the comments from Facebook because of the way we're connecting via an RTMP connection. I can't pull in the chat. So I will read. I love the topic of sacred cow. I wonder what sacred cows churches have, or we personally have, especially as we head back to in-person worship services, which have to adapt. What sacred cows are we going to need to let go of? The interesting thing is I'm going to keep reading in here. Hey, Chris, what's going on? Good to see you. Is that the concept of there's this poor worship team, and we've talked a lot about this team, not in a degrading way at the magazine, but they really, really needed some guidance. And they were making the best of what they could do, but it was online worship that was being streamed, and it really was very evident that one of the things that we're still not very good at is raising one another up. And at the magazine, I feel this fiercely because I've spent so much time hands-on working with people. We haven't quite wrapped our heads around how we do something not to build the brand of the magazine. We are a brand. We are a magazine. That's a separate piece because in building the brand, it allows us to have greater influence for the kingdom, not for us. But the idea is, how do we actually get positioned so we can pour into teams? So that's the great thing about Músicos Adoradores, this Spanish quarterly edition, we really feel that God has propelled us forward to do that. But we also know that there's so many English-speaking churches that the vocals are kind of out of tune, and there's not very much dynamics. And with just a little bit of dynamic arrangement down for the first verse, bring it up a little bit for the pre-chorus, bring it up for the chorus, bring it down for the second verse, but not as far as the first verse, bring it up for the pre-chorus, and then that second chorus, and push through into the bridge, and then bring it down for the breakdown. How long did that take? Like, 15 seconds? Like, the problem is the conversations that we could, and should be having, it's not always easy to have them. And we haven't figured that part out on the magazine side. But the point being is, what are some of the sacred cows that are, I think about all the things, the fancy lights, dare I say the LED walls, an LED wall isn't super impressive on video, sitting at home on a TV. I remember there was a church that we were going to for a while that had this very, very impressive LED wall in person, but watching the broadcast online, it was so much visual noise watching it. It was dizzying. I'm just like, this isn't working. And so the season that we're in is, we know that there are going to be a lot of people that are perhaps going to be interested in establishing a relationship, but they may not be interested in coming into our church. That is going to make us have to really rethink it. And I would say, the first sacred cow that comes to mind for me is like, oh, well, we just go, once we just go back to business as usual. The band starts playing, everybody comes in 5 minutes. Did I say that? 5 minutes late. Sorry, I get to have just a little bit of fun. Come on. And then we just kind of go back. Somebody comes up and does announcements. The video plays and the audio's not up loud enough, for the first 15 seconds. I mean, just business as usual. You know what I'm talking about. And I love my sound techs, but like, how many times have you seen it's like, it's not like we didn't know there was a video coming. It's just like, now that said, our sound techs have now got a very interesting thing, because they're now mixing for two paradigms, for the venue and for the live stream. Which gets us to this, again, sacred cow. We have to stream the service live. Well, do you? Maybe not. Maybe what you actually do is you actually capture the service, just like we used to do with the podcast. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, we used to put the podcast up after the service, right? The other thing is, dare I say, I got an idea for you. You want to hear this? What do you say we take last week's message and take it live this Sunday morning at 9 a.m.? That's thinking out of the box. I'm sure there are lots of reasons that some days you might not want to do it, in which case then you go live and you don't do it. But the ability to take last week, who's going to know? I mean, seriously, it's like they'd have to be there to know. The point being is, it's a great way to provide a phenomenal, rock solid presentation for people that you've edited, you've done this, maybe you got a couple multiple cameras, and just for the sake of conversation, I use an application called Ecamm Live. If you're shooting with multiple cameras and capturing to multiple computers, you can, what you can do is you can take the first service and the second service, and at a camera edit point, you can toggle between those two services, or virtually camera edit. So that is to say, you're shooting both services with two cameras, and they're both captured, and you cut over to one camera or the other when you want to toggle between the two services. It's not rocket science. It's kind of like those of you that have recorded a single guitar track, and I like the first half of this one and the second half of that one. Nobody else is gonna know. Okay. I digress. I'm having fun here. Hang on. Let me take a look here. Let's see here. There we go. Brett. Relationships are vital to effective discipleship. Ooh. Which means sometimes you will need to be uncomfortable and open with people you'd rather be distant from. You think. And this is the funny thing is, they're probably just as repulsed by us as we are by them. But the reality is that, here's the thing. Difficult people, not always, but they tend to feel pretty unloved. when you really get down to it, some people are just miserable because they make the people around them miserable and they don't know how to help themselves. And if we don't get into the mix and show them the grace and the kindness and the gentleness of Jesus, it's our fault. I'm not saying it's our fault that they're miserable and that that they're having a hard life, but if we can get in and kind of build a bridge for them to have a closer relationship with Jesus and to feel the acceptance of unconditional love of the Savior, and we're the person that's holding back because we're like, oh, I really don't want to see him. I just can't do it. That will be one of the things we will answer for. And I'm not being, but we have to understand that sometimes we are called to be the hands and the feet, and God didn't go, hey, would you like to be the hands and the feet today? I need somebody, but if you don't want to, it's cool. It's actually God was like, you're up, go to it. And the great thing is that this gets back to this whole thing. We dare I say, and I know I'm not talking to you, but we want God to be obedient when we want Him to give us what we want. How obedient are we when He tells us what He wants us to do? And I mean, I'm not being like jerky. I mean, really, are we all in? Or are we okay? I really don't want to see Him. Or like, hey, you know what? I'm in. And I'm going to be all in because I think that's what I need to do to have the right heart about this. It's kind of like, what do they say about dogs and children? They can smell fake and fear a mile away. I think people really know it. And I'll never forget one of my favorite ministry moments, an honest moment. There was a guy at the church I got saved at, and he said to this woman that was kind of, how do I say it, a little overly self-important. She was young and in leadership. And he just turned to her one day in front of a room full of people and said, you really don't like me, do you? I mean, just why don't you just admit it? You just don't like me. He said, no. I like you. I like you. And I'm just like, you're a liar. I'm sorry, did I say that? But she just, she's just in front of the room full of people and she didn't like this guy. He knew it. Everybody else in the room knew it. And she was like, no. And it's just like, why don't you just go, you know what? You challenge my patience. No, you're not supposed to say that. But the point being is the feigning, no. It's just like, we got to learn to be real with each other and just say, you know what? I love you. And you know what? If we have differences, I'm going to work my way through it. And that's an honest answer. Because we need to get real with each other. That's a sacred cow of just kind of like the overly polite. I'm watching the stream delayed over there. I'm waving my hands like an imbecile. All right. So let's see. Here we go. Right mouse. Okay, let's see here. Okay. Yes. Okay, let's see if I can read here. There we go. Yes, Christopher Gianella. Hello, my friend. Chris, have I ever told you my family, a big part of my family's from Michigan? I don't know if I told you that. Christopher Gianella resides in Nashville, but he is originally from Michigan, in case you hadn't gotten the Michigan part there, which was pretty stupidly obvious. Doing life together makes for such a stronger team, and it resonates on stage too. Absolutely, the congregation can sense that as well. I got to tell you, it seems so evident. I'll go you two. You watch those guys, and you sense the connection there, right? We used to have barbecues here at the house, and we were missional about bringing the worship team and the sound team together because we knew that if we could get people together socially, they would bring that social relationship with them as a foundation for building a closer relationship and serving one another at church. It doesn't take a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of intentionality. And intentionality is pretty easy to outwork. Christopher, always a pleasure, my friend. Melissa Doppler. Oh, there she goes. Shorter, tighter services for online church. What flies in person doesn't work online. I love that. So Melissa Doppler, in case you hadn't noticed, is my wife, and she is a rock star, and one of my favorite rock stars. And I'm going to come over here in just a moment, but I want to speak to that. Is ultimately one of my buddies, who is at one of my favorite churches. And I won't mention his name and I won't mention the church, but they watch the analytics really closely. And the idea is like people want to get some great worship. They want to be immersed. But here's the other thing. There are ways to around doing online worship, and I realize that this is the worship musician, worship guitar player show brought to you by worship musician. But what we do in person doesn't necessarily have to be what we do online. That is to say, you could have some sort of playlist that is one of the things we're looking at here with the magazine is we have very close ties with the Christian record labels, because we work very hard to support them and their artists. It's one of the coolest things that pretty much nobody knows is happening in the background. These great emails, and it's one of my favorite things to do, and I never talk about it because there's no point. But the point being is we're thinking about how can we kind of have some sort of kind of like because I'm seeing them now where it's a channel or a playlist that just plays the videos, so people can just kind of have this thing playing. Maybe they're working in Word or whatever it is that you're doing at home, but you have some great worship going in the background that's just playing on a YouTube channel in this playlist. But the point being is you could have a church playlist, and the thing is that if you do it as a live stream, one of the things you could do is you could have somebody come in and, if you will, moderate that, and then at a certain time, then you send people over to the main service or something. There are options to that, and the reason I say that is not because of the quality of the service, because I think the challenge of a sound team of getting a great mix front of house, and I'm not even going to ask how many of you are satisfied with your live front of house mixes, because we need not go there this evening. But then in turn, making a volunteer sound team responsible for basically, it's kind of like rubbing their head and their tummy at the same time and expecting them to have a great mix. That's really hard work. And again, the idea is like, why don't we just record last week's service, put it up this week, and with a bumper, you can go, hey, blah, 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 such and such weekend, blah, 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 here's the announcements. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of doctoring, but the idea is you can also have a live segment where, you have a set list of songs. This is what it is how it ties in with the message, blah, blah, blah. The other thing is putting together some sort of Spotify playlist, or whatever. The point being is there are ways that we can lighten the load and make it easier for those folks so they can get really good at mixing live sound, like more guitar. Looking over here. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Here we go. Oh, I love this. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Alan McDonald. Hello again. When you actually sit down with the most difficult people, that is the gold right there, ladies and gentlemen. I could stop now. There's a story there, and they don't trust telling anyone, or some variation thereof. Show them you care and keep close, and you'll find what can be a great friend. Absolutely. And here's the thing. Is generally speaking, not exclusively, bad behavior, quote unquote, usually has a root that if you care to invest in people, you can really find out what's ailing them. And, it's usually more of a symptom than a personality defect. Like, there's some genuinely unpleasant people in the world that seem to get off on being genuinely unpleasant. And they're kind of cool with that. And but then there are people that come into church that have been hurt in church, hurt outside of church, family of origin, all this stuff that if we're not the hands and the feet, and we don't take the time to kind of go, hey, you seem like you're hurting. How can I help? What's great is that, again, getting back to our farmer's market analogy, think about all the people that you know from the worship teams you served on, and think about now the number of years you've known them. Think about how long it takes to plant a seed. Put that little mound of dirt over the top of it, give it a little bit of water. The intent that thing's going to grow into something that's going to be fruitful. I think we get so busy in the rinse and repeat cycle of week to week church, and to Melissa's point, what are the sacred cows that we're spending all this energy on, as opposed to the things that we're really supposed to be spending our energy? I'll go a step further. I'll go on a step out on a limb here, because I'm going to do it. I'd love to know how much of the stuff that we actually really spend, if you looked at minute to minute investment, is an actual outworking of what Jesus is saying in the Bible to do, as in discipleship, our 12, the feeding and clothing the hungry, being compassionate to widows, compassionate to, being the hands and feet of Jesus, versus like, hey, we got to get, got to get the guitar louder. Okay, I said it right. It's like, all right, well, maybe the guitar, it is important to me, but maybe, maybe it's too important. Pains me to say that, but if we're gonna really try and be honest, could it get done with an acoustic guitar and a direct thing and not having to bring some fancy pants new piece of gear? Sorry, I couldn't resist. Or, for example, hey, can't I just bring my Marshalls, please? I did it at my mainstream gig. Come on, it's really groovy, and I got Strat too. It's really cool. It's upside down, and I got a wah wah and a fuzz face. No, didn't think so. All right. Sorry. And fun. A worship team that has fun together off the platform. As Christopher, you said it, you bring that onto the platform with you. A worship team that rehearses together brings that onto the platform. They carry that. I can tell you those Hillsong folks, they actually rehearse. I know it's hard to believe, but they actually do. Go think it. All right, all right, all right. Let's take a look. See here. I've adopted multiple mice here, so I've got three. I got one slightly hard of focal without lenses and three mice here. There's a three blind mice joke, but I'm not going to use that word with myself. Okay. There we go, Christopher. Hang on a second. Okay, hang on. Wait. Oh, backing up. Oh, this is so much fun. Love you guys. Okay. Hold on a second. All right, here we go. Good. Oh, look at this. Thank you guys for getting active here. This is great. All right. Okay, there we go. Forest. And very immediate topic for us. We need to be purposeful and practical in mentoring. Putting on a smaller guitar gear clinic, smallest church for kids next month. Awesome. Way to go. The basics, so less about educating, but more about uncovering interest and connecting with kids, getting them involved. Who doesn't love talking about gear? I mean, here's the thing. The great thing is that honestly, if we're gonna, let's have the how do I say this? Let me switch gears, and I'm not going to say this. It was going to sound not as I intended, nor the heart of it. Let's have the adult worship team version conversation of this. The conversation may be quote unquote about the gear, but the real conversation is about how we come alongside people, and we forget that that's it. Because when we do that, we get in each other's lives. We have the opportunity to come alongside one another. We get a chance to sometimes iron sharpen iron, but more importantly, we are present in each other's lives. And that is, I think, if we're really honest, I would say the number one reason that people who are saved go to a new church is they are seeking a deeper sense of connection that they didn't feel for whatever reason. Let's not go there. Where they came from. Which means when they walked through that door, there was an opportunity for somebody to come alongside them. Hey, you're new. Let's go for coffee. Tell me about yourself. And sometimes somebody will open the book, or somebody will just kind of just put the book on the table. And sometimes people who've been really hurt in church, takes a minute for them to open up. And they also know it's just like, hey, you know what? I don't want to bring my past into my future. I just spoke to somebody there. I felt it. And that's hard, right? I get it. But we have to be really conscious of like, you know what? You don't want to take last week's trash out of the bin and bring it back inside. And we all do it sometimes. I get it. But sometimes, again, letting go of those sacred cows, we hold on to stuff, right? I think I remember, what was it, Old Yeller? And they were talking about the raccoon down at the creek, and they would basically put something in a can, and the raccoons would put their hand inside the can to grab it. And they were so fixated on whatever it was inside the can that if they let go of it, they could pull their hand out. But and it was a trap, right? They couldn't get out of it, but they were so fixated on what was in there, they couldn't free themselves. We've all been there. I get it. But sometimes we have to make a decision. I'm just like, you know what? I've just got to let this go. And it's it's kind of like roadkill. Sometimes it's easier to stare, but that doesn't mean it. Just because it's easier does not mean it's better for us, right? You know what I mean? Okay. Um, Melissa Doppler, my favorite. I heard an analogy once that if a church is full of mature turkeys and no chicks, it will be dying church. I love that analogy, right? I mean, what are we doing? Hillsong. I'm just going to go there. I'm going to ring that bell all night long. We're now at the third generation. You know, that is powerful. It's living proof that discipleship works. It's just great. We get frustrated with the chicks and want them to be full grown, but we were all chicks once. Totally, totally. And I was a big chick. Um, I was a little chick. I don't know what the heck I was. I was something. I was a lot of. It took a lot of work to get this rooster to stop being a. Not going there. Uh, Brett. Yes, I've seen. Yes, treat Christians. Somebody's thinking that's funny. Now. Treat Christians as if they're saved now to be instantly perfect, right? But it's trying to clean fish before getting them in the boat. Hold on a second. Let me. Sorry, I'm a little wacky tonight. And that's the thing is, it's like, I mean, this was kind of my analogy about crossing the bridge. Is I think there's a certain time that we all see our leaders just kind of leading out of their flesh or whatever it is, and if we don't have investment in that relationship, we don't have the skin in the game to be able to say to our leaders, because a great thing about leading up is being able to have a rapport with your leader and go, explain this to me. Because, first of all, as somebody that has led a big team without a lot of staff to do it, I don't mean a giant team, but like 30 people kind of trying to make sense of the lights, sound, and worship teams and multiple, kind of in a small church with multiple services. Small church, big enough to have multiple services. There's a lot of ringleading going on there. And feeling that you're being sniped, just kind of like, when you're getting the knives in the back, and you're just like, I'm just doing the best that I can. You're welcome to come and help, but like the knives in the back as I'm walking by doesn't really do an awful lot of good. The point being is that, there are times it's actually good to say to your leader, song selection. I saw that. We'll get there in just a moment. Oh, don't get me started. Do get me started. The thing is that having that relationship, being able to lead upstream, is part of the thing about being, ask not what your leader can do for you, but what you can do for your leader. When you're invested in your leaders and are actively going, what can I do for you? How can I help? What can I do to lighten your load? When it comes to a time where you've got a question about something, there's that rapport. Same thing that happens with the team. That is a 360-degree relationship. When we serve people, that affords us, not so we can have that opportunity, but it does afford us the ability to kind of go, I'm not seeing this. Can you explain this to me? Because most of the time, people, when you come to them without the kind of like, I don't like what you're doing. You shouldn't be doing that. It's supposed to like, all right, maybe it's me. I'm not, there's something here I'm not seeing. Can you explain it to me? Because then you're actually, and if you're genuine about it, you're like, I'm going to believe it's me before I'm going to believe it's you. Explain it to me. And we just have to go. If that leader is above me, I have to believe that God is actually talking to them. And I hate to say it, I don't want to burst any bubbles. We're not going to be privy to that conversation. And it is dangerous ground to step upon to believe that God's not talking to them and working something out with them. And our getting in the way of that in an inappropriate way is not helping. Okie dokie. Not that I feel strongly about that. Um, okay. There we go. There we go. There we go. There we go. And the gutting of the fish. Oh, my word. There we go. Oh, there's Melissa just echoing me. It's like, it's not our job to clean them. That's what the Holy Spirit does. And our job is to get out of the way, actually. Paul, thank you for talking about this. Doug, leaving a legacy is so important to me. Um, and Edward's passing, or anyone we look to for inspiration, certainly reminds me to sharpen and use my talents for God's purpose and not my own. It's a funny thing, you have a family. There is this dichotomy of what God's trying to work out in us sometimes of like, I want to do well because I want to provide. I want to provide, so I need to do well. Those are logical and good motivations. And God, has rewarded us with this feeling of satisfaction when we do well and we achieve. It's not, it's a funny thing. It's this, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like the parent that buys the kid a car that's a little too fast, but knows that the only way the kid's actually going to figure that out is actually by getting into a turn a little too fast and going, I just scared the poop out of myself. Okay. And God really has a huge amount of grace, and sometimes He gives us the opportunity to let us have it be about ourselves so we can figure out that it's not about that. And honestly, God had that conversation with me last week. He said, you realize the reason I'm doing what I'm doing in your life is so all these unsaved people can actually see what I'm doing in and through your life. It is not about you, Mr. Doppler. And I was like, and the funny thing is he said it like that, and I was like, ooh, loud and clear, thank you. And that obedience leads to reverence. It's kind of like our dogs. Really? Uh, Obedience is really good for them. You let them run around and be dogs. They're unmanageable and they do not behave appropriately. My wife once accused me. No, it was a friend of ours who said that I would say things that were inappropriate. Mel, put that in the chat there. Something appropriately inappropriate or something like that. Maybe it was Uriah that said that. It's totally hilarious. Um, okay, hold on. I saw that one over here. So I'm going to jump over to the song selection, and I'll take that bait. It's the same with song selection. I would much rather not have a part to play and be with my team to have the spotlight. No relationship with my team. My job is to lift them. Absolutely. It's an interesting. This concept of the special is a really fascinating thing because coming from the mainstream guitar thing, I remember. There's one particular mainstream show that I did in a club called The Hill, which has been closed for decades. But I remember I went to take my guitar solo, and like people from all over the club ran up to the edge of the stage, and I was like, huh. And it was so strange. Like the rest of them said they were sitting back at their tables, but when the guitar solo, like that moment came, like people literally just like came up, and I was like, and I liked it, but I didn't like that I liked it because I knew that there was some disparity there that felt uncomfortable, and that was an ego thing. So the point being is that spotlight is an interesting thing. And part of it is, again, you got to give the kids the keys to the car and let them figure that out. You got to work it out. You can't keep somebody on the sidelines because, you don't really learn anything on the sidelines. You can watch, but it's not until you're actually out on the playing field that you kind of go, oh, I'm now in the middle of the play instead of observing it. you don't really learn how to play unless you're in the middle of the playing field. And that idea of sitting out and letting somebody get onto the playing field in your place and being able to be a coach and be on the sidelines and and I'll give you a positive breakdown and an affirmation. One of the things that I would always do, and this is an interesting thing, and it may or may not work at your church, but I liked the idea of, as the leader, and somebody's gonna be like, "You did what?" Where at the end of the service we would have a recap, and and I don't remember, it was it's been a minute. It was either talking about the previous week's service. Now it had to have been at the end of the service, and I would be like, have a praise for everybody, a genuine heartfelt praise, because the thing is, when your team is moving forward, there's always something to praise people for, like something that was better this week than the week before. And then I would ask people to just say, can you tell me one thing that you want to continue working on? Because getting people to actually have some verbal accountability on the things that they know they need to work on, and being able to talk about it, kind of opens that up and lets the cat out of the bag. One of the things about that is that it is a conscious vehicle to not have people snipering each other. They don't practice. Well, the person admits themselves that I could probably spend some more time practicing. Then the sniper doesn't have to actually pull out the scope and just kind of go, I'm going to wait until you can't see me, but you'll feel me back there. I have very little patience for that. It is not the way to get things done. Let me see over here. Yes, Chris, family from Michigan, Benton Harbor, a town so poor they repossessed the police cars. I kid you not. Henry, what's going on? Melissa, that is more apparent when we are trying to keep the worship contemporary. Oh boy, I'm going to open that can of worms. At some point, we need to have the next generation ready to lead in worship in order to keep it relevant. Oh, dude, like in a serious way. Not all of us are able to age and stay relevant like Toby Mac. And that, 2 weeks ago we had Droff on here, and he said something, to paraphrase him. I don't want to be the old gray guy up there with gray dreads up there, when it's no longer my time. And I was like, to hear Nigel say that, I was just like, that's why he's Nigel. I just love that. I'm like, because at a certain point, you reach a certain age and you're kind of like, there comes a point where just because you might want to put on skinny jeans does not mean that you should, or the cultural equivalent these days. All right. That's so funny. That's so funny. Reading, of course, takes time and commitment. Yep, genuine relationships take time. What's going on, Brandon? Now, there's a nice take on it. So, Brandon's comment, I haven't played on a church worship team in 3 years. It's refreshing just to go to church. That's like supreme unleaded, right? Like, that's the high octane. It's like, I'll go there. So just because, and I'll pick up with what Alan said. That's chocolate and peanut butter. That's a Reese's joke, of course. You got that. All right, sorry. Just because you can serve on the worship team, and I'm not saying this as like, you don't have enough talent. That's not where I'm going. Just because you can serve on the worship team doesn't mean that necessarily you should. I remember one of the most empowering things that Melissa said to me early on in our marriage was, you're so much more than a guitar player. And I'm not saying that to speak of that about myself. I'm saying about, our pastors before we got married, the Pastor Gale said to Melissa, breathe life into the dry bones. And I have benefited from that. I mean, I'm the result of discipleship. not that, I am. Here's the thing. God's putting me out on the playing field a lot these days. I'm very grateful for that. He's not putting me out on the playing field because of me. He's putting me out on the playing field because he's got stuff to do. And so the point being is that I'm so grateful that I get a chance to be out on the playing field, especially my age. Like, it's just kind of, but it's because of what people breathed. It was the people that prayed over me before I got saved, out at a conference in the South Bay, in a car, basically packed with people, and they were just power praying for me to get saved and for me to get my life right with God. I mean, there's been a continuous group of people, my in-laws, just people praying over me basically the entire time before I got saved and afterwards. And, so, we haven't actually talked about that, but, there is so much. I'll go there. I'm not, quote unquote, super spiro, but, I am a spirit filled kind of person. And I will say, and here's the thing, let me be really clear. No judgment if you're not. Totally cool. All good. But there is something that if you are a person that does pray in tongues, that happens when you're praying for somebody, that happens on a supernatural level that is far beyond my limited intellect of being able to take the Bible and rephrase that into prayer. It's just something that happens on a much deeper level. That's just, it needed to be said. So whether it's that or just kind of praying, Lord, I just pray that, you get a hold of this person, that, you can help them turn from the path that they're on, because it's not going to lead them where they ultimately want to go. Lord, reveal to us what we can do, how we can help, how we can be present, and the power of prayer. We could not have this conversation and not talk about, the need to be praying and, unceasingly for some folks, and I think, it's interesting. I would have to say in the modern church, we pray, but I can't say that I hear as much as I think we should about, we need to be praying for people in our immediate circle unceasingly. It's just, we're honestly, we're more distracted with the live stream mix, myself included, guilty as charged. Not cool. All right. Rehearsals. Oh, ho, ho. Says the guy who hasn't played on a worship team for 3 years. I'm making friends tonight. Oh, there goes a heart right away. Brandon, rehearsals are very important. Why is a rehearsal important? Is a rehearsal a sacred cow? That's, here's the thing. I think it's worth asking, making a list with 100 things and going down that list and going, are we seeing it for what it is? And a great way would be, the easy way would be to put a scale of 1 to 10, how important that thing is. The slightly more complex way is you have a range of things of like, how relevant is that to the congregation that we're trying to reach? How long have we been doing it? Are we seeing fruit from it? A range of qualifiers, and then using those qualifiers to measure each one of the things, and pretty soon you'll find which things are actually resonating across multiple verticals and actually being the quote unquote obvious choices. Sometimes just because of, something we're doing doesn't have a huge amount of fruit doesn't necessarily mean that it's not important. Say, for example, you have some sort of recovery group. That's a much smaller segment, but yet the segment of people that you're actually intersecting really need God's touch. Rehearsals are important. I'm big on rehearsal. Why are rehearsals important? Because it's actually a really good idea. There's this person up at the lip of the platform. They're called a worship leader. And when the worship team train wrecks and the poor worship leader gets taken along with them, there's a thing called rehearsal that usually precludes a lot of that. And if there were adequate rehearsal, they would actually, then you just have maintenance practice as opposed to, kind of like, oh, let's just dust this, let's dust the stuff off again. That's just me. Let me not be snarky about it. People are busy. I understand that. But the thing is that, the worship leader, they're kind of the one that's kind of really ultimately ministering to the congregation. Not that the musicians don't, but they're the one that's holding the microphone. They're the one with the lyric screen is what they're doing. Your chords aren't up on the lyric screen. They are making a connection with the congregation to take them somewhere that is hopefully preparing the way that when the man or woman of God brings the word of God, their hearts are already open, right? That's a really important job. Our job is to make their job easier. So their job, which is to make the pastor's job easier, which is to make the congregation more open to receiving the word that God gave the man of God, that was supported by the worship leader, that was supported by the worship team. It's not always laid out so clearly, and sometimes we forget that. But when we're not doing that part, we're precluding the worship leader from actually really being able to confidently, that is to say, not wondering, like, are they going to hit the right chord, or are they just going to play this thing ad nauseum? It's a thing. It's an important thing, a really important thing. Let's see. Okay, good. There we go. Yep, caught up in doing, Melissa. All right, Paul. So awesome for us. It's so important to use our God-given talent for others, and it will create opportunities for being someone who they can look up to. Absolutely, and you said it perfectly. Connecting, praying for your plans. Ooh, replying to Brandon. This is Melissa. Absolutely. People always ask, "What do you do?" instead of "Who are you?" What do you do? As opposed to like, who are you? Tell me about you. You know, and I realize it's okay. I'll unpack that. It's easy. It's convenient in Germany, and it may have changed, but I doubt that it has. Uh, you could generally tell the class levels by the type of car that somebody drives, because, and I don't know if it's still that way, but basically a lot of the companies would provide a car for an employee. The nicer the car, the further they were up the rung. So there is this kind of like, oh, where do you work? What's your title? What do you do? How important are you? And we bring that secular attitude into church, and we have a similarly attitude. I'm like, I'm the guitar player on the worship team. I've got a Helix, and you don't. Um, I'm of course being facetious, but the thing is that I had a buddy. I can't name the church, and I love this guy. I mean, I one of those take a bullet for it kind of relationships, and the guitar player at this church said, "Oh, well, you can carry my pedal board for me, and clean it too." And my buddy was in the process of potentially on ramping to be a member of the team there, and the guy was just like, "Oh, you can and when you're done, go ahead and shine my shoes and wash my car." He didn't say that, but basically that was the attitude. I'm like no, and this was just obviously somebody that had a little too much of an entitlement spirit about overly self-important based on their role at a well-known church. They didn't get the DNA, but more importantly, they completely had the discipleship model completely asphyxiated. And my buddy it was such a negative experience. he basically was like, it's cool. See ya. Um, no, right? That's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to like go, hey, you're the new guy. What's on your board? What do you got? I mean, I realize, that's the equivalent. I was like, what do you do for a living? But the point being, yeah, a big wow, Alan. I mean, it was just like one of those stories. I was like, what? I mean, I wanted to fly to the seat and I wanted to meet that guy. I'm like, hey, that guy's like a kid brother to me, and that is jacked. Like, why don't you explain to me where you get off telling the new guy to carry your pedal board? I mean, just like, no. Grow up, Doug. All right. Let's see here. All right. Let me make sure I'm not missing something as the chat's cruising along. There's kind of a side thread here about being selfish with your talents. It's an interesting thing. Is just like as believers, we're kind of set apart to kind of play by a different set of rules, right? Knowing that we want to influence for the kingdom, right? So it means that we don't necessarily operate from the place where we know that our gifts are not for us, right? We know our gifts are intended to be invested so other people can benefit from them and work as unto God, right? So with somebody like a mainstream musician, it's easy to forget that they may not have been read into kind of like, oh, and when it's really hard. I mean, this is the thing. Even if you're on a really well-known worship team, there's a lot of adulation that happens. It's hard. I think we're not designed. It's a thing. Rick, my buddy, easy boy. uh, that's so funny. Hang on a second. Let me pull this one up. Wow. All right, Rick. um, I want to see how I end up getting learning something to do. I've been struggling with. Okay, hang on. I want to see how they get their sound. I end up learning some way to do something I've been struggling with. Right. So I think, Alan, correct me if I'm wrong. You're speaking figuratively because I have a feeling we know that we don't necessarily want to put the reverb in front of the distortion unless we decide again, maybe it's a sacred cow. Maybe that is the new sound of worship guitar. We really want distorted reverb. It is a sound that it's create a new sound, right? There we go. Thanks, Rick. Again, sacred cows. It's making something sacred that wasn't supposed to be, right? All right. Yeah, there we go. Melissa Doppler, accurately inappropriate, inappropriately accurate. Andy Stanley talks about publicly honoring supporting leaders gains you private access, ability to speak. That right there, like, as a leader, when you know your team has your back, you know that even when you make mistakes, because every leader makes mistakes, they're not going to condemn you when you fall short. They're just there. They're with you regardless, right? It's like a football player. Like they need everybody to be heading in the same direction. You don't want to be like letting the line open and there's like cream the quarterback and you're like, I'm just trying to lead worship. It's like, sacked again. But the congregation isn't clapping like, nice sack, way to go. They're high-fiving each other. Let's get a hot dog. Sooner or later, they'll be serving beer in the back. It's like, we do not need to do that. Alan, yes, we're talking figuratively, but that's, hi, welcome another, show me what you got on your board. That's the whole thing. But like, that was kind of my point is like, it's shop talk. Shop talk isn't about, hey, what's your role? It's just like, hey, so, you got the big sky. Nice. Right? versus like, oh, you've got the big sky. You're one of those guys. I think we just got to just get over. I'm not saying that to you. That's that. I'm just kind of like, it's like, you got reverb. That's awesome. A lot better than no reverb. But I mean, the qualifying is like, what brand of pedal is that? All right, hang on a second here. There we go. Tim, hey, what's going on? There's a Casting Crowns song called Only Jesus. Mark sings about not wanting to leave a legacy for him, but for Jesus. Ooh, pull that down. We've actually done it a few times for part of our service. I think that is the goal. But as long as I am human, I will never quite able to get that point. It's sure fine line to walk, being excited about people's reactions, but not living for it. That's I mean, that's the that's just the thing. I mean, the great thing about that is where God outworks the stuff in us. Like if we don't come out of the womb perfect. And the moment we say, I believe, we're not all of a sudden, every area of our life, transformed. The journey is that we get a chance to be inspiration to each other. Sometimes in our failings and our overcoming spirit, when we've fallen short and we get back up and we're like, okay, let's try this again. And we learn stuff in the act of failure. I mean, here's the other thing. Failure is actually really good because you learn to kind of go, I didn't see the thing that I should see coming. Next time, I think I'm going to see it coming, right? And the whole thing about, and your point about legacy, and I want to make sure that I am clear about that, because it could be misunderstood. And I'm not saying that you misunderstood me. What I'm saying is I want to make sure I am not misunderstood. Is that our legacy is like, hey, you know what? I left this place better for the people that are here, that when I'm gone, it's better for them, not because because of the meanest part of it, right? And it's an important subtle distinction, but it's a big distinction. And I think we again, in the busyness. Here's okay. If I would say, if there's a sacred cow that just needs to be slaughtered and turned into cow burger, is the being too busy. We are too busy for the stuff that really matters, which is actually going like, when was the last time an entire worship team spent once, I don't know, a month. Think about the number of pay cycles, the number of diapers, the number of car payments, house payments, credit card statements, insurance premiums that happen in the midst of all of that, and all the stress in that. Like once a month would be a really great cycle for the worship team to spend an hour together praying for each other, praying with each other. If you're into the laying hands thing, hey, what's going on, Chris? That connection. There's nothing like having somebody pray for you. It's kind of, it's like we've got these two dogs. They kind of sometimes will clean each other, and it's not like that, but it's analogous of watching the affection that they have for each other being outworked. When you see people's affection for one another being outworked in prayer, it's really powerful. And, that as a bonding vehicle, but then the glue being, God activating that prayer, because here's the thing. This is like, big takeaway for the night. Those opportunities, we've got to be purposeful and missional about them, because those are the opportunities that God will activate our prayers. Which is to say that if we're not praying and creating those opportunities, I'm not saying that God can't work. That's not what I'm saying. But like prayer is the kind of like, God, come on in, please, please, get in the grooves. No, we're setting time aside just to make it about you getting into the grooves. Come on in. God never says no. He's just like, oh, prayer time. I'm in. What do we got here? Who do and it's like, all right, who's got, who needs prayer around something? It's like, There's nothing like being in a room full of it's one of the things that I did with the team that I led. We got in a circle. And I'm like, hey, who needs prayer about something? And went to have a room full of people that you're on a team with, and so I need prayer around this, and to see a room full of people respond to that from here, it's powerful. It's just like you can cut that with a knife. It's just kind of like, but you got to make time to do it. You've got to make time to do that. All right, let me. I'm seeing beckoning about various topics and subtopics. So let me see how I'm doing over here. Um, Josh Jonas, hey, what's going on, my man? Look at that. Hey, one of my favorite ministry people. How about that? Oh my word. Josh Jonas, it's not about us. Need I say more? The man who needs no introduction. There we go. Um, there we go, Brett. I find it deepens my trust in God to pray in the Spirit because I rely on Him to intercede through me and not rely on my own intellect or ability. I wish I'd said it that succinctly. I'm going to reread that. Lovely, Brett. And here's the thing: if you don't pray in the Spirit, all good, all good. But this really articulates it so well. I find it deepens my trust in God um, to pray in the Spirit because I rely on Him to intercede through me and not rely on my own intellect or ability. Reading my mail. Uh, there we go. All right. Right. Oh, okay. I've got a Melissa Doppler. It's humbling to become the moms and dads in the church. When did that happen? How did that happen? But it's true. There are seasons, and we have biblical responsibility to pour into each other. I have one other thing, and this is straight out of Kim Walker Smith's handbook. I've had the privilege of interviewing a number of truly inspirational people, such that we can pass on the pearls of wisdom. And one of the things Kim talked about, and it's really, it's just, Kim just is Kim. But she was like, look, sometimes we want somebody to disciple us that, it's kind of like getting married. Well, they've got to do this, and it's got to be that, it's got to be this, it's got to be this. Got to be on the worship team, got to be a great singer, got to sing perfectly in tune, got to have perfect time, and they got to have all the time in the world for me. And you basically just described nobody on the worship team. And that's not saying disparagingly. What she said was like, look, there are a ton of church moms out there. It may be highly probable that the person that you think you need is actually right there in the congregation. Even like, there's nobody that I connect with on the worship team. I just feel unloved. It's like, actually, Kim was like, you need to get yourself off the platform. You need to march down, and you need to make some relationships off of the worship team. And seek out that woman that can provide. But let me rephrase. She was speaking about female worship leaders. If you're a man, seek out an appropriately divided. Yeah, you get it. Gender correct discipleship relationship. And it was just to hear Kim talk about it. Her heart was like, look, we know that everybody hungers for those relationships, but you may not find that on the worship team. But don't sell your church short because you didn't find that on the team. There's probably somebody in the congregation there that is eager and willing, and God's already said, I'm going to send somebody to you who needs you. Because that's just how God works. It's kind of like he's got it covered. All right. Let's see. Wow. Melissa Doppler, never cease to be impressed. I want my legacy to be sowing seeds that bear eternal fruit. Wow. Oh, boy, oh boy, oh boy. Not much to say to that one, other than awesome and amen. All right, so I got a couple of gear. Oh, I love that. Look at that. Not for my glory, God, for yours. Hide me in what you're doing. Yes. I love that. Hide me in what you're doing. That's so not me, but I wish it was. I received that. That was like whew, ninja to the heart. That's good. Mm, potent. All right. It is a worship guitar show, so I will gleefully entertain this. Hey, Chris, how you doing? What is the most surprising piece of gear you've seen on a worship guitarist rig? The funny thing is Fuzz Pedal is the one that comes to mind because it's the kind of the antithesis of the traditional. It used to be like everybody had a Tomb Screamer, and then everybody had a Clonabee. That's kind of funny. I just made that up. I mean, come on, that is kind of funny, a Clonabee. And then so it's kind of like, all right, then I've got this and I got that. But the fuzz is, and I think James Duke was kind of fiddling around with fuzz, and I think Saint Pope too. It's just kind of not the typical thing, right? You can't really use it for crunchy chords down at the bottom that can make a solo section go big or the bridge, but yet for kind of cool parts, it's just a different sound. I think that's pretty cool, if you ask me. There we go. Worshipped at a super church in Madera, California. Beautiful times and experience. Awesome, awesome. I love it. My buddy, dear friend Rick, prayers for all of California. They need it more than ever. You have no idea. This is a state that is in a state. There you go. It's a funny thing, right? Narrow the gate. But it's the best part, right? It's the farmer's market. If I could plant, oh gosh, a seed, the idea of like, we see the end result and it's like Hillsong. We see the result, but we don't really see all the hard work that went into getting there. Um, well, Rick, the thing is that the push, 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 push is, I don't know why the analogy I get is a potato being peeled, but I'll go there. What happens is when we're trying, sometimes God's just peeling that skin, right? And he's just kind of going, I got to take this stuff off because it's not going to serve you for where you're going next, right? And sometimes it's stuff that we're conscious of, and sometimes it's stuff that we're not conscious of. And the great thing about having a living God is he's like, I've got your back. It's just there. And and the great thing is God sometimes even rewards us even when we have a bad work ethic because he's got our back, right? It's like, and that's the thing, is he's not a performance oriented God. He wants to see us work hard, but he's not like, up, F, back of the line. No blessing for you. Take a hike. That's just like, it's like, even the undeserving, God's got. It's like, because that's unconditional love, right? How much of that do we actually give to the people that we were talking about before? The challenging relationships, right? The ones that it's easy to judge. Maybe they're, sexual sin, well, they're doing this and they're doing that. And like, what are we doing to pray as opposed to, I'm saying that, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area here. I've seen some really tragic people come to church and feel like outsiders of church. It's hard when you actually know the background of a lot of these folks. It's just like well, maybe you can, but figuratively, you can't imagine what some of these folks have been through. It's just like, and most of it is children where people just get in their head and twist it and twist. It's just unconscionable what some people have put through. And guess what happens is they grow up and their lives are as twisted as the people that manipulated them when they were children. I mean, it's just like it's heartbreaking. I'm laughing because Rick said metal zone. A metal zone at church. Now that's Oh, that's funny. Amen, Rick. Show up, practice, and ready, rehearse, and don't forget the metal zone. I love it. Uh, I use the jawbone analogy. If he can use the jawbone of a, I know he can use me. I love it, Alan. Thanks for hanging out tonight. I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. All right. Melissa Doppler. Too often. Ah, yeah. Too often people walk off the platform, not engage people outside the team. We used to actively encourage people to go straight off the platform and speak to someone they didn't know or serve with. Amen to that. Um, and helps to broaden our sphere and also keeps us grounded. I love that. All right. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is 7:26. It is it's time to say I'm going to see you next week. I really appreciate the opportunity to just kind of unpack this together. The neat thing is that the together part. It's been one of my favorite things about this time is that it's perhaps because people are to whatever extent starved for meaningful interaction that's not in a Zoom meeting. Um, but it's been one of the things that I've really, in the midst of a very strange time, Josh Jonas, I am not worthy, but thank you. Pleasure to see you. Let's make a point of when the masks come off and people can do the bro hugs again. Let's get together. That would be awesome. Um, the point being is, I think this opportunity to there we go 926 in Alabama. Um, the opportunity to come together and actually talk about some of this stuff. It's a real privilege to do that together, and we have the privilege of having the Nigels and the Saint Popes and the Stooges come on, and I love it when they get real. I mean, here having Stu G close in prayer last week, I was like, I've got my eyes closed, but I'm kind of like really wanting to open my eyes so I can just watch him, just like prayer ninja. But at the same time, I really love the ability to talk about some of the stuff that just kind of gets pushed into the groove sometimes. Um, and it's been a rough day for me. I would love to think that Eddie Van Halen, in the midst of a divorce, bouts with cancer, all of that stuff is with an eternal father. That would be like, you know, I've had a crushing day. I was working on something. Fortunately, I finished it. I think I saw a first text kind of stream across while I was still kind of in motion. Finished what I was doing, and then it was like Eddie died. I was like, just tears instantly. So it's been a roller coaster of a day. So to be able to have this joyful moment of community is really a pleasure. Alan, really, really nice to meet you. I don't think we've met before. I'm Doug. Hi. So thank you. Really appreciate it. And Rick, uh, yes, he is with us, and I love you, brother. But you already knew that. Um, and everybody, thanks so much for hanging out. We'll be back next Tuesday night. We do not have a guest lined up, but we shortly thereafter there will be a nice stream of people that are not just inspired worship guitar players, but really um, God's put something on their lives that the talent is a saddlebag through which God kind of puts a purpose, right? So what's neat is that these folks are all mature enough. So hang on, wait, hang on. Let me actually not be an imbecile here. Let me go. Hey, wait, I've got dates here. Hang on a second. Um, so Oh, this is going to be great. Okay, so on the 20th, we've got Chris Rocha and Mike X Zuniga, and they are uh, Chris Rocha is a brilliant guitar player, just brilliant. Plays with Miel San Marcos, is a producer with them. They basically sold out Madison Square Garden. I mean, like, and they're kind of described as the Hillsong of Latin America. They're huge. Mike X Zuniga is the bass player that is associated with that. So we're going to be kind of having and those guys, they got some chops, but not chops for the sake of chops. But they're some serious players. And then on the 27th, we've got my buddy Tyler Logan, and so we have this amazing relationship with multi-tracks. It's just a God thing, you know. But Tyler is a guy that I met at a live recording in Texas, and you know when you the moment that you hear a guitar player who can quote unquote really play start playing, you're like, ooh. It's kind of like in tennis when they got a little something on that first ace. You're like, they know how to serve. Tyler knows how to serve, and you know I just really enjoyed getting a chance to watch him play. And then afterwards, I kind of went up and introduced myself and just, you know, asked him what kind of reverb pedal is that, or whatever. And we just, you know, we've just become friends. And we turned out we knew some folks in common, and just over the past couple of years, we've gotten to know one another. So he's got some. Well, first of all, Chris Rocha also has some Helix and GT1000 packs that are available through his website. But Tyler has released some Helix presets on the multi-tracks Sounds, I think that's right. Sounds platform. So, but it'll be great to get a chance to reconnect with Tyler. He's a phenomenal player, an absolutely lovely guy. So, oh, Mark Swanson. Wait a second. Wait. The people are sneaking in at the last minute. Hold on. I'm not out of here that quickly. Oh my word. Hang on. Holy cow. The late crowd. All right. Hang on a second. All right. Just one sec. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Thank you, my friend. And no, there will never be another Eddie, and he was our generation's Hendrix. You're totally right. Totally right. Okay, hang on a second. Look at this. David sneaking in. Look at this, praying for his family. I know the feeling. Me too. No, it's just been one of those days. Mark Swanson, hello. Listening in the background. Love the evenings to have you share with generosity and wisdom. Too kind, but thank you. Um, and heart with all of us. So sad today. Also love you and your ministry. Thanks, my buddy. Thank you, really. You know, to whom much is given, much is required. You know, it's he's so generous, and you know, it's an interesting thing. Just to kind of in closing, this concept of legacy. I mean, when you think about, you know, somebody who's had the impact that an Edward Van Halen has had, you begin to realize the opportunity that one of these, you know, can. It just is, you know, and it's taken me a lifetime to kind of, you know, I don't know if you heard me kind of the talking to I got, you know, I guess it was last week where God said, "Oh, you know, you kind of need to figure this out. This is not about you. It's about what I want to do through you." And again, you know, God's just a little busy in my life right now, and I absolutely love being able to be purposefully driven for whatever it is that He's trying to do. But it's easy to get distracted by the the enjoyment of loving what you do, right? Versus kind of like, well, what is at the heart of that? What's the purpose of that? Why am I really doing this? Why am I doing this? And why is He doing it, right? Um, and so the that conversation is a really powerful one because, you know, the interesting thing is success is this elusive thing. Like, you know, Eddie, you know, it's so funny. All right, I'm go a little longer. Eddie has been the past week has really been the past 2 weeks, but the past week in particular. I've been listening to Van Halen songs over and over and over again. I've been thinking Van Halen, breathing Van Halen, playing Van Halen, and then today he's gone. That space that he took in the music world, the ability to have that amount of impact with this is the Worship Guitar Show. So the Nigels and the St. Popes and the Chris Roaches and the Tyler Logans, and the us. God puts this thing that brings us joy, but the purpose of it is much broader than we would choose to sometimes really understand. And so just feeling that giant implosion with the loss of that guy has meant so much to me in terms of inspiration. It's going to take a little bit of time for me to outwork that, but it's really humbling to just kind of know that we get to play the same instrument Eddie Van Halen did. Like, that's the kind of God we've got. He doesn't hold back the good stuff. It's just like, oh, I mean, like that, think about all the lousy stuff that happens in the world where the good stuff seems to be held back from some of the most deserving and needy people. It just blows the mind. All right. Thank you all. I got to answer this because of something I'm doing tomorrow night, and it needs to be answered. And I'm gonna take this bait with the correct mouse. So there, come on, get over there. Before we close in prayer, I'm toggling here. So Bosch GT 1000 is still very relevant. This is the GT 1000 core. This just showed up. My buddy Jeff Slingluff is going to be hanging out on my other show, Doppler's Gear Garage, tomorrow night at 6 p.m. I am demoing this thing and tracking stuff already. It's... Huh. Will this play? Hang on. Muting said mic. Gotta hit the space bar in the right application. Nope. Testing, 1, 2. All right. Well, I guess that was just a sign that if you want to hear it, this thing's nuts. It's basically this big. It's a full GT 1000 popped into this thing. It's basically all the guts from a GT 1000 in this little baby cute little box. And there are some staggeringly good sounds. I'm kind of, and I just basically went to work, and the moment I plugged in, I'm like, oh, hit record. Yeah, it's nuts. Oh my word, we had to have a little gear garage on the way out. As a huge PV fan, I play all sorts of weird 80s and 90s PVs. Wow, cool. I know a bunch of guys that built his stuff, and we all heard on this one. Right, I got James Brown's card right here. I don't know James well, but yeah. Yeah. Oh, Chris. All right, so we're there. So last night, I've been doing this 30-day guitar challenge on my Facebook and YouTube, and Instagram, I guess. But the thing is that yesterday I felt really moved to do this tapping dominant 7 arpeggio dealio, and it's just totally Eddie off of, I don't know if it's OU 812 or the record after that, but ironically that was, and I'm not going to do one today, because fortunately there are 31 days in October, so I'm out of respect, I'm not going to do one today. But ironically, last night it was the Eddie thing with his tapping thing, and it was just totally Eddie. In any case, uh, it was just kind of, there we go. Yep, they're the guys. Um, it's sorry, I'm digressing. In any case, it has been such a pleasure. It, strange combination, God and gear, but that's what makes the Worship Guitar Show worship and guitar. So in any case, Lord, humanity and life is a fragile thing, and it it moves so quickly. So Lord, I just pray. I pray for everybody that's here. I pray for their families, Lord. I pray that the things that they're hurting about, Lord, I just pray that you provide them comfort, that you provide them reception to their ideas and their aches and their pains, so they feel heard and listened to and cared for. Those that are lonely now in this time, Lord, I pray that you comfort them. Those that are in transition, Lord, I pray that you remind them that without transition, we don't get to the places that you've set aside for us that are uniquely ours. And that sometimes the journey, Lord, is where we get shaped to be ready for where you need us to be positioned. So, Lord, I just pray for the that your will be done, Lord, above all things. And I just pray that we keep each other in prayer. And I just give thanks for this time together. And I'm just grateful and thankful. And we love you. And thank you for being so generous. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. All right, everybody. God bless. Take care.